Thank you. Good. So I think it's pretty much 5 past, plus the last student just entered, perfect timing. So let's make a start. Welcome to Econ 7200, Economics of Financial Markets. My name is Axel Wieneke. I want to introduce you today first to the class. We do a little bit of a course overview, assessments, and so on. You get to know me a bit, and we start with the first lecture. So teaching team first, my name is Axel Wieneke, so I'm the coordinator and your lecturer. You can find me in the Colin Clark building, just 2 buildings further down the road, in room 522, so it's level 5, room 22. You can just drop by. I have an open door policy, so you can drop by or come during the consultation time. If you have any questions, you can also ask them via the discussion board, or I might set up a Facebook site or a similar discussion site where we can have online discussions as well. So if you have any kind of questions regarding this class, content-wise, don't write me an email. Because 20 other students will have exactly the same question. So it doesn't make sense to answer 20 individual emails. It's much better if you have these kind of questions on the discussion board. And there's also no such thing as a stupid question. The more you ask, the better, also during class time. Also, it is very likely that even if other students haven't thought of that question, they might have had that question later in the exam. So by you putting out these questions early on the discussion board, you do everybody a favor. So don't be shy asking questions. Tutor team, currently we have Lee, Shu, and Abhishek as tutors, so you will spend quite a bit of time in the tutorial. The tutorials here are very important. Let's do a little bit background of me first. As you can hear, I'm not an Australian native, but I speak with a German accent. So I grew up and studied and worked in Germany. I studied also a little bit in the US and in Australia. And since 2006, I'm living in Australia. The first 10 years roughly, I was living in Melbourne and was teaching there at different universities, almost all of them. And since 2016, I'm at UQ now, which is the best out of all the universities I've been to up to now. So you're very lucky to be here. It's a very good place to be. Assessment. So this is basically straight from the ECP. The ECP, of course, is very important. Tutorial attendance and preparation, 5%. So this is not a huge number, but I made it red. Why did I make it red? If you do very well in the tutorial, if you come frequently to the tutorial, prepare for the tutorial, work actively in the tutorial, you will do well in the exam. So don't take the tutorials too lightly. They're very important. I've got 2 tutors per tutorial because it's meant to be very interactive, where you actively work. Then there will be a project, part 1 and part 2. I will give you further details about that one online and also next week. So these are basically essays. However, this class used to be much smaller. We used to have around 50 or 60 students. Now we're sitting at almost 160 students. So I have to scratch my head a little bit how we handle the essays the best, because you can imagine it's a lot of essays then. And we give you feedback on these essays too, so that you can improve. I'll do the details later. And then there's a midterm exam and a final exam. Word of warning, the final exam also has a hurdle. So you have to achieve a certain percentage to pass this class. Getting lots of points in all the other assessment tasks is not sufficient. So you need to have sufficiently points in the final exam as well. And all the hurdles and the details are written in the ECP. Good. Questions so far? Everybody's happy? Good. How to succeed and what to do. So in general, you're expected to read widely. We will provide you readings in this class, especially Frederic Bracout, who designed this lecture, is writing a textbook as well. And these chapters are freely available to you on our Blackboard site. And they're going to be important. It's going to be much easier to follow the class and to succeed in the exam if you read these chapters. They're going to be important because we stick closely to it. Participation, as I said beforehand, feel free to ask questions anytime here in class. Ask lots of questions in the tutorial. Speak to your neighbors. It's going to help you, especially at this time of the day. Otherwise, you fall asleep, and it's a bit of a waste of time. I'm just realizing now 2 things. Number 1, microphone. Loud enough, especially the people in the back row. Good. So I can see 1 thumb up. Everybody else is just doing nothing. When I ask questions, I'm happy enough if you just nod or shake your head. If you do something, if you just do this, I can't tell how the class is going, right? So if you give me some kind of feedback, it helps me. From the study group, I'm a very big believer in group studies. Reason number one here is simply, let's say you studied very well, you get lots of 7s. In this class, we are often requiring you to explain certain things too. So you've got the right answer in your head and you write it down on paper and you think that's pretty good. But now I or the marker are reading the answer, and whilst it might be correct, we don't understand what you're talking about. We simply don't understand what you mean. And then you lose lots of marks, because if we don't understand it, we can't give you full points. And you never figure out yourself which sentences are easy to understand for other people and which ones are hard to understand for other people if you study by yourself in your own study room. So that's another good reason to study in a group. So the way I did it as a student is like group of 3, group of 4. One student is explaining things to the other students, and if they don't understand it, they ask. And there's 2 reasons why they might not understand it. Reason number 1, it's simply false, so it didn't make any sense. Reason number 2, it's correct, but not clear enough. Both reasons you have to fix to get full points in the exam. And both of these you can fix already in your study group. So that's why I personally believe it's a useful thing to study in a group. And on top of that, later when you enter your work life and you want to go ahead, have a steep career, being able to work in a group is also very important. Plus, all the students that you meet here now might be very useful career links for your later work life as well. So the more you network, the better it's going to be. Plus, it's more fun. So that links into this one. Introduce yourself to your neighbor, if you haven't done so already. If you have know your neighbors from the left and the right side already, maybe turn around and see who's sitting behind you or in front of you. Have a little chat. Let's spend 3 or 4 minutes on this one. So the louder the classroom gets now, the happier I am. I can see already, so for people who sit by themselves, that's a bit hard, right? So if you move closer together. So, very good. Okay, that works well. I'm happy. So what is Econ 7200 about? Basically, we want to understand financial markets and financial institutions. And that requires a good understanding of financial instruments, assets, and pricing. Now, I don't like to read off the slides. Basically, in a few seconds, we will make practical examples, and we start with the lecture content, and then you see much better what I'm talking about. So in this class, we will talk a lot about banks, for example, the bond market, a little bit about the share market as well. Then we get a little bit of a feeling with arms up, arms down. Anybody of you ever had an accounting class? Surely some of them. Yeah, I'm not biting. Arms wide up, that I get a feeling, because we will do lots of accounting as well. Okay, let's do the counter test. Anybody never had an accounting class? Good, I can see it already. There were some people that didn't put up their arm up at all, right? So they didn't have accounting classes, and at the same time, no, wait a second, they neither had accounting classes nor didn't they had accounting classes, which makes it a bit tricky. So, and that's a typical problem that we have as lecturers here, that people just sitting there like this. So in the future, what I often will ask you is to just raise both arms, and then we do the opposite with arms down. Actually, let's do that now. Let's make everybody both arms up, that I get a bit of a feeling what's going on. We don't have anybody with broken arms here, do we? Looks good. Everybody's healthy. Thank you very much. High up. We're not finished yet. Thank you. So now put one arm down if you had accounting classes already. For example, I had accounting classes, so I take one arm down. So only two arms are up if you never had accounting classes. Yeah, okay, that gives me a feeling it's almost 50-50. Good, so we do some accounting stuff here. If I'm being too fast with the accounting, just slow me down. If I'm too slow because you already had an accounting, well, enjoy your time, right? Don't talk too loud to your neighbor. There will be other parts that will be harder for you too. Good, we do this one on another slide set. Let's get started. Slide sets. So you've got the slide sets on Blackboard. I can see lots of people have printouts. I think I wrote that on the Blackboard side already in an announcement. If you do printouts, maximum 4 pages, 4 slides per page. Because if you have these tiny printouts, what I see sometimes, they're becoming pointless because then you can't read anything anymore. So 2 or 4 pages is fine. I think 2 is maybe the optimal mix for me personally. But don't put 6 or 8 on one. That's not going to be good. Good, first topic, financial instruments and channeling of the financial system. Now, what do we mean by this one? Background reading is Frederick Brackwood's chapter 1. That is online already available. Objective for this class, so there's lots of objectives, right? I'm just flying through some of them. So we will have the first introduction of what we mean by financial instrument in this class. So it's not a musical instrument, but a financial instrument. We distinguish loans and securities. We talk about the whole life cycle of a financial instrument. So of its birth, how it's going through life, and then how it dies in the end. What else do we have? Flow of funds diagram. We make a little bit. That means we're talking about funds, how's funds or money flowing through the economy. Related to the financial instrument, balance sheets we will do a lot today. We will distinguish between payments, liquidation and funding. Is there anything I want to pick out here? Primary and secondary market, and amortization is going to be the hardest part. Let's see if we get to that one. So what's the whole idea of a financial instrument? Now, financial instrument can be or is often a security, and basically you should imagine it as a contract. So it's a way to get funding, or it's a way to get money. For example, we could have a bond, and I made a bond here, which I will use very shortly, or a share. I want to get to a practical example, and then we are quicker. It's more interesting. So let's take this bond here, for example. So we promise to pay a certain face value. So on this bond here, it says you will get $5 sometime in the future. If you hold that piece of paper, you will get $5. That is the so-called face value. You can recall face value. There's often a face printed on that bond. So that's the face value. Then there's a maturity date. At a certain point in time, you will get that money. Now here it's at 1886 because it's a very old bond that we found. Nowadays they're not printed on paper anymore. So nowadays if you buy a bond, it's usually 2020, 2030 where you might get your money back. And we've got so-called coupons. So there are these little things here that are attached to the bond where you get a certain amount of money. Here it's 7 cents, 7.5 cents that must be. So at certain times, if you take that coupon, you can exchange it for money. And we've got shares. I want to push shares actually into the future when we practical share example. Then we've got, you notice I'm a little bit fast, but that's okay because I will repeat this in a few minutes anyway. Then we've got loans versus security. So what's the difference? Both on a loan and in a bond security, you exchange a contract against money. So if you go to the bank and you get a loan, the bank is giving you money and you give them therefore a signature on a loan contract that you will repay them in the future. Similar for a bond, a company might give you a piece of paper, the bond, and you give them therefore money. So in that sense, they're both very similar, but there's one major difference. A security is standardized, so there's lots of these pieces of paper, and they look all the same, so they can be often traded in the market. You cannot trade your loan, or your bank cannot trade your loan easily, so they can't sell your loan to somebody else, the loan contract that you have. It's often very uneven numbers, it's only to you personally, so they're not tradable. That's a major difference between a loan and security. Loan, by the way, here is gray. Things that I just want to mention now, but which we don't go into deep at this point of time, or not at all in this class, I gray out a little bit. It means it's good that you saw it, but you should not put a major focus on it now. So the life cycle of a financial instrument. First it's issued, then comes payments, then transfers, and then redemption. 1, 2, 3, 4. That is what we will spend basically the next half an hour at least on these 4 things. They will come up on other slides over and over again. So this is giving you kind of a path that we're going now. We want to talk about issue, payment, transfer, redemption of a financial instrument. Creation. So what I will do now is we're just making this very, very practical. So I'm in need of funds. I need cash. For whatever reason, I want to get a coffee for a class and I have too little cash. So I want cash. And I want to get the cash from you. Now, how can I get cash from you? Now let's pretend I'm a large company and I can go to the market. The market is now here, our classroom. And I can issue a bond. Issue a bond means I'm just writing a piece of paper. I'm making up a bond. And on this bond I have the following things. First of all, I'm promising to the bearer. The bearer is somebody who's carrying something. So whoever carries that piece of paper will get by the end of the class $10 from me. So at the end of the class, whoever has that piece of paper will get $10 from me. But not only that. In between, around every 15 minutes, if you have these so-called coupons here, you can swap each coupon against $1. So if you give me this piece of paper, I will give you $1. Everybody on board? End of the class, you get back $10. In between, every 15 minutes, you get $1, $1, $1, $1, $1. Any questions so far? Because I will auction it in a few seconds. So you can pull out your wallets, possibly if you want to participate in the auction, and we can auction it off. Any questions before we start the auction? No? Okay, let's start. Anybody's bidding on this piece of paper? Anybody wants to give me $1 in exchange for this piece of paper? There's $1. Anybody wants to bid more than $1? Just yell a number into the room. So I take it as $2. $2. Anybody 3? 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. No, 6 we already had. You have to go to 7 then. Anybody on 7? 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, I'm counting to 3. So we're sitting at $10. 1, 2, 11, 12. What is this? 14? 14? Anybody more than 14? 1450? Raise your arm that I know who it was with 1450. Anybody more than 1450? 15? Anybody more than 15? Hopefully not. Oh, do you want to bid more than 15?
I can get 20 back, right? I can get 20 back, right?
You can get 20 back,
Yeah.
but not from me. Look, this is literally what you can get back. These are not $2 coins, are they? No. Right? So whoever has a piece, because I don't want to trick you, right? Whoever has a piece of paper gets 10 back, plus 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 15 all up. Everybody on board? So what we do here now is, firstly I want to get $15. I can see already what's happening. Do you have 15 in cash? Wonderful. Last year when I did this, the student didn't have any money. Yes, it's cash, sorry. I don't have ATM facilities on me. No, I remember I wanted to get a coffee. See? So that's actually very good. That happened last semester too, that a student was bidding and doesn't have cash. Right? Now that can happen. What you could do is you could borrow money from somebody. If somebody wants to borrow you money, lend you money, that would work too. Otherwise, we're sitting at 1450 was the next highest bid I remember. So 1450, you've got the cash? Yeah. Wonderful. Sorry. I'm okay with 14 and 10 cents. Then we can move on with the class. Thank you very much. Okie dokie. So what do we see here? Firstly, I think most of you realize because there's hardly any time passing in class, so the present value of that bond is actually $15, right? So if I'm not running away, and I swear I won't, that bond is worth $15. So in that sense, you made a bargain, and which is a really good example because on the slides in a second we will have a very similar example too, where somebody is paying actually a different price to the bond than the face value. Good. Now, what I have done here, I was the agent in need of funds. I needed more cash. Right? I didn't have enough cash. I just bought the cash here so that he believed me that I can repay the bond. But in general, you can see now I have more cash than I had beforehand. Right? Beforehand, I had $15 lying here. Now I've got, I'm too lazy to calculate, almost $30 lying here. Right? So I received funds. I received the blue funds here. Usually that would be a bank deposit, but I didn't have that technology with me. Of course, if you're buying $1 million in real bonds or $10,000 in real bonds, you would do that in cash, right? Then it's the bank transfer. So I received funds, and in order to get these funds, what I did is just created, so the circle here means creation, like a birth, a bond. So I just wrote that piece of paper, and that enabled me to get money in. And that piece of paper I gave to you. You are here, in that case, the agent with excess funds, right? You didn't have too much money, but you had money spare in this moment for this class. You didn't need the money for the time of the class. You have been able to lend it to me for this time. So this is step one, the issuance of a financial instrument. Everybody on board? So I just issued a bond to you. So how do we do this on a balance sheet? So we do use a lot of T accounts here. First I should introduce a T account. Let's do that for me first. Let's say this one here is my T account. A T account, you just write down on a piece of paper first simply a T, a very large T. And then on the one side, on the right hand side, we write down the so-called liabilities and equity. So that means where is the money coming from? So how did we receive money? And in my case here, I'm not writing down your name that I've got the money from you because we didn't have a loan contract, but I just issued a bond to you. So I just write down, I created a financial instrument, I've got a bond. And that's a liability for me because that bond, that piece of paper said, I have to repay you in the future. So I've got debt. But on the other hand, I've got something positive. I received cash from you. And that is an asset for me now. So this is an asset. This is something good for me. And these two sides always balance out. That's the reason why it's called a balance sheet. I've got debt on the one side, or liability on the one side, and I received a bank deposit on the other side. Numbers we do in a second. And basically we can see this here as also so-called expansion of the balance sheet. Beforehand the balance sheet was, I don't know, whatever I had here, $15 for example, all up. And now I have a balance sheet that is the size of almost $30. So I've got $30 in cash here, and my balance sheet would look like the following. I came into class, actually I'll do it. So that's my personal balance sheet. You have here liabilities and equity. Here we've got assets. And let's check how much I had. I came into the class with $25 in cash. That's what I had in my wallet. And that was all my money. I didn't borrow that from anybody. I received that as wages in the past. It was mine. And therefore it was on equity here. I can call that one. Equity, $25. And then I issued that bond on top. So I created a bond. Let me see how I want to write down the numbers here. I created a bond. And what did we say? $14.10 you gave me, right? And I received that, so it was plus $14.10, and cash was plus $14.10. So the top part here, we don't write down in our class because we don't want to write, the balance sheets are huge, they go over several pages and we don't want to write down everything all the time. We're just writing down the changes, the new things that happen in the balance sheet. In our case, something additional happened here, so we write it down with a plus. Later on we will see if you take something away, we would write it down with a minus. So for me, I've got additional cash in from you, thank you very much, but at the same time I created a new liability as well, the bond with the same dollar amount. So these two sides here must always be balanced. If you do something in accounting, we always have to book on both sides of it. No, sorry, I shouldn't say both sides. We always have to change two numbers. Always. Never change just one number. There's going to be always a change in two numbers if you do the balance sheet. Otherwise, it doesn't remain balanced. Good, so that was my side. How does it look for you as a provider of funds, right? For you, the wallet, in your wallet, there's now $14.10 less than beforehand. So you lost a little bit of an asset there. $14.10 is gone out of your wallet. But you got something in return. You've got that piece of paper now, the bond. And that is an asset for you because it's worth something, and it's worth for you now $14.10. PEI stands for price at issue. And see the slide, just one second. The slight difference for me, my balance sheet got longer, so I changed both sides. Whilst for you, it was just a swap on the assets. You changed one asset against another asset. Good, and that was the question?
Yeah, so why 14 and not 15?
Yes, that is a very good question. We will see that in a few seconds with the amortization. I think some textbooks would put down 15, possibly there too. It depends upon, because I made a loss with this transaction, correct? I gave away a bond that should have been worth 15, and I received only 14.10. I made 90 cents loss there. And the question is, at which time do you put the loss into your balance sheet? Do you put it in immediately, or at the end, when we do at the end of the class exchange? That's how we'll do it. Or what you could also do is in little pieces over time. And that is actually one of the tricky questions that we will answer today in the class. So it's a good question that you've asked. There's kind of three ways to doing it. Either you make the loss or the profit straight away, you make the loss or the profit at the very end, or you make it during that time when it's called amortization, which we'll have towards the end of the class. Good question. Good, everybody on board so far? Okay, so we just created this financial instrument. Now comes the next one, payment of income. So during the lifetime of the financial instrument, interest or dividends are due. So interest is on the bond. Dividends is something that we call on shares, but I want to push shares just for the timing for at a later stage of time. Interest, I think it's about time for interest too. So you've got coupons over there, correct? So on that coupon it says you will get $1, right? So what I'm doing now is I'm bringing you the first dollar. This is an interest payment because we are so nice and patient, but I need one of the coupons therefore. Thank you very much. So on that coupon, it even said $1. It doesn't say 1% or 5% or whatever. It literally says $1. And then we can have a little side information already. What we did here with that bond is a so-called fixed income security, because it was printed literally on paper how much you will receive at a certain time. There is no randomness or variable interest rates going up and down. It was written on that coupon. So nowadays, bonds are never printed on paper, and they don't print these things down. It's all electronically. But it's going to help you in exam question the rest of your life. Literally remember or depict what we just did here in class. It's a piece of paper where there's coupons attached to it. And these coupons basically give you the interest. Not the yield, that's something more advanced that we will have later, but the cash interest flows. Good, so this number one, gone. And what we can see here is there was $1 floating from me, the issuer of the bond, to you, the current investor. You are holding, literally holding that bond in your hand. So as payment of income, one example. How do we put that into the balance sheet? Now for you, you got $1 in cash now, from me. And that interest income is not part of the money that you lent to me. You lent to me the, well, you gave me $14, so it's a bit hard to say in this time. But usually, let's imagine that bond would not go for the time of the class, but would go for 5 years. Then most likely you would have just given me around $10 and not around $15. And then the $1 is much more easier to understand as interest income, as kind of making your own profit. Right? So you receive money just for waiting. And now because you made this kind of profit, we put that down on your side as equity. So if you don't spend it immediately, it's like, I don't like to call it saving. So just think of it a little bit like your profit. You earned the interest. So again, the balance sheet always needs to be balanced. Since you've got $1 plus in cash, you get $1 plus in equity. Or I've got another explanation for it. Remember, the balance sheet always needs to be balanced. So if I write down plus $1 here, I could keep it balanced by writing down minus $1 also on the assets. But what would that mean? If I write down your balance sheet like this, so you were the investor, and now the interest is floating to you, $1 interest, plus $1. So far so good, right? Now I need to keep things balanced. Don't copy this down now. If I wrote this one down here, what would that mean? Exactly, right? If you would have sold me something for $1, so you would have gained $1 in cash, but you've given something else away. But you didn't really give anything away apart from the coupon, right? But the coupon, you still have the bond, right? The coupon was just to see that I have proof that I gave you the dollar, right? So if you would have given another asset away, then you write it like this. But that's not the case. You just got the $1. You didn't have to give any assets away. Therefore, this doesn't make any sense. And therefore, the only way to keep it balanced is to write it here, plus $1. And here we can write it in two different ways. We could write that your liabilities increased or your equity increased. Equity, right? Because the liability would mean that you owe me something now. And that's clearly not the case. I had to pay the interest. That's it. You don't have to repay it to me later. That's your $1 now, literally yours. And that's the reason we write it down as equity here on this side. We'll practice that 1,000,000 times. So if you don't have the 100% hang of it yet, that's okay. But you have to, within the next 1 or 2 weeks, you have to get the hang of it. Otherwise, the class becomes very difficult. So these are all basics. Good, I think I've got that one covered. So for me, it was a loss on this side here. So I lost the $1 cash, and therefore it was like a real expense for me. Right? I've lost equity in that sense. Transfer to another investor. So what could happen is you get a phone call and I don't know. Do you like certain kind of music? Or is there any kind of TV show that you like a lot? Just give your neighbor quicker. The investor, yeah. Is there anything that you like to do a lot, that you enjoy a lot? Shopping. Shopping center has a sale on 90% reduction. Surprise sale for the next 1 hour. You have to leave class, right? Very important to go shopping now. What do you do with the bond? You've got the bond, right? Do you want to stick around, miss on the sale, 90% off sale, just to get your $14 back from me? Most likely not. So what could you do, or try to do? I hear it there, sell it. You said something else, give it to somebody else. No, not just give it, right? But you could try to sell it. Higher price, right? Or not necessarily higher price, because you're in such a rush. We can even try now. Anybody wants to buy the bond? Or the other way around? For what kind of price would you sell the bond now? Don't make anything difficult with math. Just look at how much coupons you've got left. For how much would you sell the bond? $14. Anybody wants to pay $14 for the piece of paper now? Not right now. Anybody wants to pay a little bit more or less? More, of course not. A little bit less? $1? I guess you don't say yes to that one. So in this case, we don't have a transfer, right? But you can imagine if you're in a real hurry, you might sell it to somebody else, and somebody else might pay a little bit more than $1. Right? So I would say, in fact, I would easily pay you, I would happily pay you $12 for that bond. No, I wouldn't either, right? Very good. But you can see there's a secondary market where you have like used bonds being sold, just like second-hand clothing, you have second-hand bonds being sold from one investor to the next investor. Now there's one major difference between the secondary market, and let me see if you had this one called primary market already. No, we didn't call this one primary market. We'll see that soon. So if you resell the bond, it's the secondary market. When I issued the bond, it's called the so-called primary market. When I issued the bond, I, as a company, received money. When the bonds are resold, if you sell your bond to somebody else, do I get money? No, right? I, as a company, have nothing to do with it anymore. Right? That's the reason why we keep that completely separate. Secondary market. So there the funds are going between the previous investor, you, and a new investor. So a new investor would need to pay you. That's the reason why the blue funds are going in your direction. You would get cash if you sell it. But therefore you have to give away that wonderful, colorful bond to the new investor. And I would then have to deal with a new investor next time I pay interest. Right? That would be my problem then. We call this in class sometimes also liquidation. So liquidation means, or I should say it slightly different, if you want to have something liquid, it's as close to cash as possible. Then we call it liquid. Good, just for the graphs here, there is no circle because you wouldn't have created a new bond, you just sold the old used bond. So there's no reason to make that circle like a birth here. Good, so that was transfers. And there's no guarantee that you make a profit or loss with the transfer. Of course, you said it correctly. You, as a previous owner, would like to sell your bond at a really high price to make a profit. But there's no guarantee for that. So now we have to check the previous investor, that's you now. So that would be your balance sheet, depending upon what price you can achieve. Right? So let me see. P2 is a new price now. You sell it at the new price, so this is how much cash you receive now. And you book out the financial instrument at the old price, so at the old $14.10, because you don't have that piece of paper anymore. That was written for $14.10 anymore. What else can I say? Let's make it as simple as possible. If you sell it at the same price as you received it, you wouldn't make any kind of profit, and then these two would just balance out each other. If you manage to sell it at a higher price, if P2, the new price, is higher than P1, are you happy or unhappy? You are very happy, right? Because you made a profit. And profit means you made your own money on top. You just didn't swap one asset against another in a zero-sum game, but you actually gained something, and the gain goes onto the equity side here. Again, we want to have the balance sheet balanced, right? So you made profits P2 minus P1. Or if you had tough luck and you sold it too cheaply, you would make a loss. And you would be, of course, unhappy. So that is the previous investor. For the new investor, there's no such thing as a profit or loss now. The new investor is simply paying you P2 and is therefore receiving a bond that is in the market at this moment worth exactly P2. If you pay $16 for a bond, that means right now the bond is worth $16. Otherwise, you wouldn't have paid $16 for it. Right? And market prices for bonds go up and down every single day. They're actually quite volatile. Good. Redemption of debt. So that's now towards the very end. Actually, let's play that all the way through. So in between, we have the payment of funds again, right? So what do we have here? I've got one coupon back. Let's just fast forward in time. Ooh, should better bring back more money. So let's just pretend it's is that okay? It's the end of the class, because then it fits nicely with the redemption of debt. So I pay you all the coupons now. There's 4 coupons left. And very, very important, the face value 10, and therefore I get the bond back. Right? So what you can see now, basically what we did is I just borrowed money for a certain amount of time. And that is exactly what happens in the corporate bond market as well. Right? Companies or the government is giving you a piece of paper, and they borrow money, funds from you for a certain amount of time. And how much you get back is written on that piece of paper. Another very important learning exercise, just because that piece of paper said $10 plus 11111, $15, does not mean that it's always traded at $15. It can be traded at $14.10. It can also be traded possibly at $16 or $17, right? So I didn't want you to do it because in our classroom that would have not been profitable for you. But in the real world, that actually can sometimes happen, that these are traded above face value, it's called then. Good, so what did we do now? I, as the issuer of the insured bond, my name was written on here, Axel, gave you funds back. That's a blue flow. And you therefore gave me back the financial instrument, and that is now dead. That's pointless, right? We are finished with this one, so I can throw that one in the bin. So that is what we mean by life cycle of the financial instrument. The birth is that we are writing it, then we issue it, so that the corporation or the government receives funds. Whoever issues it gets the first set of funds, and that's basically the unit that needed money. Then in between it might be sold. So change hands like a hot potato. The price can go up and down, but that doesn't matter for me as the issuer. I just have to pay interest for the coupons, whoever I got that piece of paper. And then in the end, I pay the face value in the last coupon back. And we are finished. Good, so that is bond finance. Basically, everyone covered. Same thing now on the balance sheet, and here we're going, we don't have the number example yet. We'll come with the number example in a second, then you see what happens with the plus and minus, with the profits and losses. So now I gave you $14 back, so my bank deposit account or my cash account is going down by minus 14, and my financial instrument here is going down, my liability is going down by minus 42. By the way, that's an important learning thing too. When I buy back my own bonds, I don't write them down on the asset side. That's not allowed. I just cancel the old bond out here. I don't have it anymore. Good, that is my side. Now, on your side, as the last investor in this example here, you received the face value, so the $10, plus you received the last coupons. And, well, here we see, depending on if you traded in between or not, you made a profit or loss on top too. So in our example here, you made a 90% profit through the whole transaction as well. Good. What do we have here? So that's very important to highlight. Issue versus sell. Issue was the first time where the unit or the company, whoever is written on this bond, is getting money, and sale is just a resale where the company has nothing to do with it. So usually when you buy, for example, government bonds now in the share market, in the bond market, then you usually buy it in the secondary market, just of somebody else, not of the government directly. It's only once in a while that the government is issuing new bonds. Most of the trading that we see in the markets and also in the news is about existing bonds and existing shares. Let me just see one more slide. I think we do this one as a warm-up after the break, because you have deserved a break now too. 10-minute break, good enough? Good, let's make a 10-minute break. That means 5 past 5. I'll see you again. Thank you very much. No, you don't need to buy this. Good question. Can you remind me after the break? Yes, it's weird, right? Because here it's creating something weird. So I create depth and center of that threshold. So I'm not rich. Remember when I gave away the bond? I received $14.10. So that's an asset. That's good fee. But also I created a liability. I promised to pay back $15. I wrote it down as 1410, but wrong. So there was counterbalancing. So I didn't get any richer. I can see already the explanation. So I increased my assets. That's $14. But I also created a liability. Oh, yes, if you owe somebody, it goes in the liability. No, the amount I owe somebody. I can see how you can do it. In some cases, they write instead of left and right, they write underneath each other. Then there are plus and lines and sometimes everything that is on the right. But for today, so all the debt, all the credit card that I have read on the right side. Let's imagine Porsche. Take a plastic. New Porsche. Worth $100,000. The car is an asset that goes here. The $100,000 credit card. Yes. Yes, for the shop. For the shop. So the Porsche dealer, what happens to its cars? More or less. Minus the car. No, I haven't finished yet. That's something we will do on the start next month. It's it's easier to do $15. So I paid her 15 at the end. Something more to do with classes. No. This is time difference. This is at the very end. In between, we have the payment of the coupons. Transfer, redemption. Number 2 is payment of the account. In between, we have $1. So what I did is I was going to $1, $1, 5 times. These are all these. And then I get 10. Not 10. Yes. So money from my bank to yours was $15. 5 times interest, $1, and 1 time interest. Yes, it's confusing. Therefore, I made a loss of minus
No, it's quite easy. See, okay. There's no. And if you want to make it even more advanced, if you rip these off and sell these by themselves, they're called strips. Coupon bond or fixed income bond? Yeah. Some people just call them zero. The principle is exactly the same. It's just that the coupons are different. Yeah, very similar. No, it's almost the same. We might have it later in classes. When you understand this one, you will understand all the others. This is already the most complicated one. Yeah.
So, 5 past. Let's continue. This is basically exactly the same what we just did beforehand, just in a different view, everything at once. So we started the whole story that I, as the issuer, gave birth to a newly created financial instrument, the bond here. And I gave that bond to the student over there, our first investor, and I received funds. I, as the company, received funds. That's the so-called primary market. In the primary market, we have creation of new bonds. This bond wasn't around here in the classroom before, it's brand new. Then the first investor can take that bond and sell it to somebody else, to the neighbor, and to another neighbor, and to another neighbor. Bonds are sold every day between different people and different investors. In the secondary market, think of second-hand clothing, right? Or second-hand cars. They're just being resold. If somebody is selling their second-hand Mercedes, it doesn't mean that Mercedes is getting money. You got the money, right? So if you have a second-hand market for cars, it has nothing, almost nothing to do with the car producers. Right? The car producers are interested in the primary market, similar for the bonds. What happens in the secondary market is not super important for the initial issuer. Right? And then finally, we come to the maturity date, the date of maturity, where we say we repay the last coupon and the face value. And so the last investor can take that bond to the issuer, gives the bond back, and we just rip it into pieces, then it's gone, and the issuer therefore repays the face value. It's also called redemption. Then we are totally finished, and the bond is basically destroyed. It's done. So that is the life cycle of the bond. Everybody on board? Good. Then let me see before I go to the next illustration. Let's do a little bit of extras, because I had some questions here in between, and they were quite good questions. So let's start with this one. So that's a little bit of an extra. You don't have to stress about it. If you like, you can write it down, but you don't necessarily have to. So let's see. If I rip off all these coupon payments, so for example, you could have done that as a student, and I rip them off not because I want to get paid the interest now, but I do it straight away. Immediately when I get the bond, I rip these off. And I'm trying to sell only this part of the paper without any coupons. Is that worth something? You don't get interest anymore from the company, right? All the interest is now in my hand. Would anybody pay money for this? Just the bond? Yes, of course, right? Would they pay the whole $10? Let's say this one is due in 5 years or so. No, they would never pay $10 now for it because then they don't make any kind of profits or any kind of return. So step one, people who had finance already know what the name is, but I want everybody who didn't have finance class before to figure out the name of such a bond as well. How many coupons are on this bond? Just say it. 0. What is the name of such a bond? Zero coupon bond, or simply zero. Right? If you read something in a financial newspaper where they say zeros are traded today higher than yesterday, that's what they're talking about. A bond where all the coupons had been ripped off, or there's no coupons. Now on this one you actually still get interest, but you don't get interest from the issuer here. You simply get interest by buying this bond cheaper. So if you buy this bond now at $9, and next year the redemption is $10, you have $1 profit or interest. So zero coupon bonds get their interest simply by buying them cheaper, and they gain value over time. Again, that's something that we do later in class, or possibly even in advanced finance classes, right? But because it's so close to what we just did, I think it's a nice freebie, and the question was there. Now an even more advanced question. Let's say you sold this one. You still have all these in your hand. Are they worth something? If you have all these coupons, should you throw them in the bin, or are they worth something? Obviously they're worth something, right? Because you can exchange all of them after a certain amount of time against $1 each. So you can sell these too to somebody else, and they're called strips then. So if you see something about strips, it's nothing naughty in finance. It's basically talking about these coupons sold by themselves. Again, not for our class, more advanced. But it was just a freebie on the way. Then I had another question, textbooks. So lots of the readings we will simply provide on our Blackboard page. So, for example, the Brackwood textbook from Friederike. She's very nice and supplies it to you for free as PDF. And that is our main source for the next 3 or 4 weeks at least. And later on in class, we will have other textbooks that we use a little bit. There's the so-called Mishkin and the Kidwell. And if I'm not totally mistaken, I will create a link to the library sources for these as well, and potentially even PDFs. So if you're really lucky, you don't have to spend any money on textbooks. Right. So I will give you alternative sources for reading up on things, so you don't have to stress at this time about any textbooks. Good. Any other questions? So you can see sometimes I'm a bit all over the place. I'm not the almighty. I might forget things too. Your job to ask me questions then. Good. Now we had a nice example already. Let's do some other examples where we have a bond issue by the federal government to UniSuper, and Australian Super sells it on. Then we have share issues at self-study simply for time. Let's see, 1712. So these are also in the textbook. Maybe we're good with time. Let's see how we're going. We do basically exactly the same game now, just where we use more complicated numbers. So, bond issue, the federal government is now issuing the bond, writes a bond, and that one has a face value of 100, so instead of 10, just imagine $100. And there's coupons, 5.5% it says there, so that's $5.50. But it makes it even harder, it says semi-annual. So what that means is there's pieces of paper attached to it, and each piece of paper doesn't say $5.50, but because it's twice a year, it says, now I have to calculate myself, $2.75. So you've got twice as many coupons because you get paid twice in a year, but only half as much, $2.75. Makes the math a little bit more complicated, but the principle is exactly the same, right? So you've got a piece of papers, all the coupons, $2.75, matures in 21st of April, 2023. So this actually is a real issue. I think in the textbook they have a link to the real issue too. So that was issued 16th of May, 2012. And it's due 2023. By the way, if you buy this bond today, do you buy it in the primary market or secondary market? Secondary market, because this bond is on the run, right? It's already in the market. It was issued the first time May 2012. And since then the government has nothing to do with it apart from paying the coupons back all the time. Next time the government has something to do with it apart from the interest is in 2023. Assume the bonds sold to UniSuper, which is sold later to Australian Super, and now we should work it all the way through. Let's see. At issue, firstly, the government is creating that bond. Creation here gives the bond to the first investor, and the investor gives money back. And now here the interesting part is they're not giving $100 to the issuer, or $15 as in our example, but 103. Now we didn't have advanced finance yet, but you can imagine usually if you would have guessed the face value is 100, you would think you should pay $100 for that bond, and then you just collect interest later. Now let's think about, sorry, I just wanted to make something, okay, you can see it already. What I wanted to push you to now, I actually planned in for a little bit later, so I should bite my tongue and just do it the way it is here. So the issue, what do we have here? The government first. So the government is happy, they get the $103 in, just as I get my $14.10 in. But at the same time, they have to write down they owe the owner something. And then here was a very good question beforehand. Well, why don't I write down I just owe them 100? Why do I write down 103? And the reason simply is I can have 3 different times where I have, in this example here, the government made a slight profit of $3. When I write down the profits, and I can write down the profit at the very end of the bond, at the very beginning of the bond, or in between with amortization. Here we do it now that the profits come in the very end. So we pretend for the time being that we have to pay back 103. If it causes you a tiny bit of a bellyache, I fully understand, caused me a tiny bit of a bellyache too, right? So it's just a matter of convention, how you do it. We do it now this way. We write down at 103 here. So the first investor, UniSuper, they give their money away to buy the bond, and they receive the bond with a current market value of 103. Same as we played before it. If you do the same thing in pictures, we have we've got now the transfer. So now UniSuper, for whatever reason, decides, okay, we don't want to have the bond anymore. We need more cash, so we sell it. And in this example here, they sell it in the secondary market, of course, at $101. But there's a dealer sitting there as well between the buyer of the bond and the seller. So the dealer, you can imagine, is simply like, let's make it really simple, it's a bit like a supermarket, right? So if you buy, what can we buy in the supermarket? M&M chocolates. If you buy M&M chocolates in the supermarket for $10, that doesn't mean that the M&M company is getting $10. They get a little bit less. Most likely they get only $8 because the supermarket pockets $2 too for its services to have it in the supermarket. Similar with the dealer. So dealer is like a supermarket for bonds and shares, right? They're collecting a fee as well. That's the reason why we have a difference here between the price that Australian Super is paying for the bond and the price that UniSuper is receiving. 50 cents is going to the dealer. Good. And the bond itself is going to Australian Super. Going over to the balance sheet. So UniSuper had the bond here. They had the bond, they paid for it in the past 103. So they had it in the book by accounting terms, market value 103. They sell it, but so the $103 bond is gone. they give it away to Australian Super. But in return, they don't get $103. They only get $101. So 2 steps, happy or unhappy, UniSuper. Give away $103 worth of paper, receive $101 in cash. Unhappy, so you made a loss or profit? Loss, right? So these guys made a loss. Now we have to think of how we can put that in the books. So we know we can't pretend we have some piece of that bond left. The bond is gone. So we have to book the bond out. The 103 is out. We know how much cash we got in, 101. We can't pretend we got more cash in, right? This is how much cash we got. But we need to have our balance sheet balanced. And we know we made a $2 loss. So the only way to write that down is now we lost in equity or wealth minus 2. So this is a loss. Profits, by the way, would be coming here as equity plus. Losses go down as equity minus. Good. The other guy, Australian Super, they bought the bond for 101.5. This is how much they paid. And they paid 101.5. This is how we put it down. Neither profit nor loss at this time. Payment of coupons. So now coupons come in between. The Australian government is paying all these little coupons all the time. So as long as UniSuper had the bond and the coupons, that money is flowing to UniSuper. Later, when the bond is going to Australian Super, the government is paying for these coupons to Australian Super. Either way, money is flowing from the Australian government to the investors. $2.75 each time. How do we book that one? Well, firstly, UniSuper is receiving the cash when they still had the bond. $2.75 in cash. And now we have to think again, well, what else might change? Did they have to give away another asset? Or did they make a profit or loss? And for them, it's like an income or profit, so equity is increasing here, simply by +2. Should I say something else already? No, let's stick with this one for the time being. For the Australian government, so the Australian government had to give cash away or bank deposits away. They had to pay the interest. They didn't get anything in return apart from the piece of paper that they throw in the bin. And that means they can't have made a loss or it's an expense of $2.75. Just as for you, if you pay for your mortgage interest to the bank, your cash is becoming less and your wealth is becoming less too. Right? You're not happy to pay these interests. Maybe that's actually not a bad idea to link that up with happiness, unhappiness, neutral. If you go shopping and you take money out of your wallet, but you receive goods, is your happiness pretty much the same? Or are you really happy that you went shopping? Or are you really sad that you bought it? Let's say you neither made a bargain, nor did they rip you off. What happens to your happiness? Same, much better, much worse. Pretty much the same, right? You just swap cash against other things that you like when you go shopping. So that would be looking like, well, unfortunately he made not a bargain here. This guy here, Australian Super, right? They wanted the bond, they have to give cash away. They did it at a price where they said, yeah, okay, we're okay with that price. Right? So their happiness didn't change. Speaking other words, their equity didn't change either. Right? For these guys here, UniSuper, why did they sell it for 101, even though it was initially worth 103? Possibly an emergency. They really needed the cash. So they're not totally unhappy, but they're certainly not super happy because they made a loss. And we can see that here, -2 in their happiness, you might say. And we had somebody who made a plus. That's the same. I think it comes a little bit later where we have somebody who makes a profit. And then, of course, you're happy, increase your happiness, increase equity. So if you ever lose track, maybe you use that one as a little helper to get the numbers right. Okay, what we have here, interest payments. Now the last step, redemption. So the Australian government is at the time of maturity in when was it? No, that's not right. This one here. In 21st of April 2023, at redemption date, the last investor is going to the Australian government, Australian Super, and gives the Australian government back its bond, and therefore the Australian government is repaying the face value. So, and now comes the big thing with the profits, the question that we had here in the very beginning. So the Australian government is paying 100 for the face value, and they had initially written into their books that they had to repay 103, even though it was written only 100 here. But now they're actually paying only cash 100, and they're done with the bond. The bond is coming back, they rip it into pieces. So they don't have the 103 liability here anymore. That's gone, even though they repaid only 100. And the government is happy or unhappy about that one? Getting rid of their 103 debt by paying 100, they're going to be happy. That means plus. And on top of that, of course, our balance sheet is balanced this way. So this is the way if you have the profit that we kind of had in the beginning, booked at the very end. What else do we have for Australian Super? Here for them, because they paid more than 100 for the bond, in the end they get only the 100 back. Happy or unhappy? Unhappy, right? So they make a slight minus here. Now I'm quite sure that was a little bit confusing, and now it's getting more confusing, but then it becomes more clear. So what's the trick here? We saw that there was a premium paid on that bond. Somebody paid for a bond that said $100 plus coupons. I pay $103. Just as you had a bargain where you kind of paid, too little for that bond, right, that I offered you, and you made a profit. In this case here, the buyer is going to, you can say, make us a little bit of a loss. Why would somebody pay $103 if the face value is only $100? Now, that all has to do a little bit with the interest. Let's jump ahead a little bit, right? So the bond, it said it had 5.5% coupons attached to it. So $2.75 coupons, but let's just think annually $5.50 for their bond. Now, why would anybody in their right mind pay 103 for 100 face value? And the answer has to do with the 5.5% here. Anybody invests money currently? What's the interest rate in Australia, roughly, right now? Can you earn 10%, 20%, 1%? Anybody has a bit of a feeling what the interests are? 5% for a year? Yeah, I think that would be very high, to be honest. But yes, so around 5, 4, let's see. Right? So here it says 5.5. Do I want to go there? Yes, I want to. Just a second, so you can talk to your neighbor. This will take a few seconds. So let's see, 2023 it said, right? So that's roughly, what do we have here? 5 years approximately, right? Do you want to continue? Yes, so 5 years. Now, look, what a good example that is. The coupon is almost the same as we had before. No, that's actually exactly the bond. Wonderful. I'm so happy now. We said, no, not exactly the bond. It's for $4.50. Anyway, almost. So the coupons here are not on this one $2.75 as on the slides, but $2.25. But here's something interesting. Yield, it says. $2.40. So we have two types of interests here. We have the coupon interest rate and the yield. And for people that had finance, this will be rather easy. For people that never had finance, this is going to be a tricky thing, but also an important thing and an interesting one. Maybe take the example from class beforehand, right? So I gave you a bond that had on paper interest of $1, $1, $1, $1, $1. But did you really get only $5 in interest? How much plus did you make over the time in total? Because you didn't pay $15 for it, but only $14.10. You got the $1 interest, $1 interest, $1 interest, $1 interest, $1 interest, and you made profits of 90 cents, right? Remember, you made 90 cents profit. So in total, one could argue you got $5 plus the 90 cents. So your yield, your real return from the deal was more than was printed on the bond because you got the bond so cheap. Same thing here too. Just imagine, for example, if you pay $100 for a bond and the coupon is $2.25. And let's make it really easy. The bond is running only for 1 year. So in 1 year you get $100 back, the face value, and $2.25. So your percentage return is exactly, if you get $2.25 for a $100 investment, it is $2.25. That's nice and easy, right? Now I'll make it harder. You pay only $99.31 for that bond. You get back after 1 year 100 plus $2.25, 102.25. Now you don't have to give me the exact number. Will this be now a higher return for you or a lower return? A higher return. And we call this return in finance yield. So the less you pay for your bond, because the face value is fixed, it's print. The coupon is fixed, they're printed. So the less you pay for it, the more profitable it becomes for you. The higher your personal return, and we call that return yield. And the market yields can change. They are not really related to what's written on the coupon. The yield depends upon how many people are saving money, how many people want to invest in the bond market. If lots of people want to invest in the bond market, lots of people want to save, take a guess, interest rates will be high or low then? Low, right? Or you can also say the bond price will be very high. Low yields, high bond price, they go hand in hand, right? And the other way around too. If nobody wants to give the government money, if they say, no, we're not interested in these bonds, leave me alone, what will happen to the price of those bonds? Will fall down. And if the price of the bond goes down and down and down and down, what happens to the yield? It goes up and up and up and up. So, got the link? So bond prices are not necessarily the face value. The bond price can be higher than the face value, then we call it above par value, or can be lower than the face value, just as is here. The face value of that thing is actually $100. Here it's only $99.31 you can buy. This one you can buy for $94.60. Face value is 100. Here, by the way, you can see too. So if this one goes down, the yield goes up. Now check this one out, 117. So here in the market, people are happy to pay more than $100 for their bond. 117 they pay for it. And why is that? Well, look at the coupons. They are very high. So that bond looks very attractive. So the bond price goes up and up and up and up because people say, this is a fantastic bond. It has $4.50 coupons. But the more you pay for your bond, what happens to your yield, to the profits that you can make? It goes down, right? Because if you pay 117 and you get $4.50, it's not 4.5% anymore. It's going to be much less. And if you do it across the 15 years, turns out then it's only $3.07. Right? Good, so we did a little bit more than what's on the slide, but I think that's quite useful because now hopefully you can see why we have these things. So this bond here, $5.15 coupons, that is a very high coupon. Therefore, lots of people want to buy that bond. The bond price goes up to $103, so that these people actually, their yield is not going to be 5.5%, but I'm taking a guess 4.7 or 4% or something like that. So that yield is going to be much lower now. but it's going to be the yield or the return that the market is happy with, right? Supply and demand. Good. Now, what do we have here with amortization? Now I want to talk about basically when do we book the profits or the losses of this different payment. So in this case, the government got more money for that bond on issue than they thought. Right? They thought we were going to get $100, but they got $103 for it. And they got $103 because the market yield, the interest rates in the market, is actually not 5.5% like their coupons. The market is happy with, I just make a number up, 4.5%. And now the question is, how should the government book it that they made profits? And one good reason is to say, well, the interest rate in the market is not 5.5%. The interest rate in the market is 4.5%. So really what you should do is you should book every single year, you have interest rate costs of 4.5%, not 5.5% as a coupon. Hence the profits, the $3 profits, you should spread out across all the years, because the $3 is kind of the interest that you save now, because the real interest rate that you're paying to the market is actually lower than 5.5%. Now I know that was a mouthful that I did, but that background information is hopefully providing a little bit more sense to what we do here. So we say the $3 premium, so kind of profit that the government is doing by issuing the bond the first time. We amortize it. Amortize is just a fancy word for we spread it across the whole time. And we do that the following way. The bond is running for 11 more years till 20, you remember the issuing date and the time to maturity, so 11 years is the running time. We have coupons twice a year, so we pay 22 coupons. So we spread the $3 profits across the 22 times we're paying coupons or interest. So we have $3 divided by 22 means each time we pay a coupon, we should book a counter profit of $1.13 cents and, how should I say that one? 13.6 cents. 22 times. Let's see how we do that one. So when we pay our coupon, the $2.75 coupon to Australian Super is getting $2.27, and they're happy that they get these interests, so they just book it down as $2.27 as gain in the equity. Now for the government, it looks slightly different. The government is paying the coupon, $2.75, again, same cash payments, just as I gave you the dollar in between. But now there's two steps on this side. Step number one, they paid $2.75. So they're unhappy about that one. But at the same time, they're saying, well, we had these profits, the $3 divided by 22. So we're taking away from the initial liability, because we initially wrote down here we owe other people 103. So we owe 100 in face value plus 3. We take 13 cents away from that owing, and we just book it down as a profit here. And the real interesting number is the net number. So if you net this one out, we get, I should have calculated that beforehand, $2.61 and 4, correct? So really, my real interest payment that I had here, not the cash flow payment, but the real pain that I feel as interest, is actually $2.614. Because the $3 profits that I made in the beginning, I just spread across the whole time. I can see everybody looks shocked or tired, but I've got a feeling if I keep on explaining that I'm just losing you.
But the 2.75 was the semi-annual one.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
But you look at the annual one, it's just the double.
Just the double, right? So annual one would be $5.50, and then we would double this one here too. That's actually very good. So maybe annual one thinking is easier. So if you had everything annual, all the coupon payments would be $5.50. And then you would not divide the $3 by 22, but simply by 11. Right? Makes sense? Good. So I know the whole thing is a bit abstract. It's possibly easier if you practice it a little bit. The main message here is really amortization just means any profit or any loss that you make in the beginning by issuing a bond, you just spread it across the whole time the bond is running. And then you're fine. Then you've got the amortization. Good. Oh, that doesn't happen too often that I'm good with time. Very good. You can consider yourself lucky. Let's see what we've got this time out of this class. We've got two markets, primary market, secondary market. Test question, if I'm buying shares now as a private household from Westpac or whatever, where do I most likely buy them? Primary or secondary? Secondary, right? If Westpac needs fresh money, in which market do they need to go? Primary or secondary? Primary, exactly. So newly issued securities, primary markets. Very good. I'm very happy already. In the balance sheet, most importantly, the balance sheet always balanced. So you saw numbers always rock up twice in the balance sheet. Never write down just -5 somewhere and then do the next question. That is guaranteed wrong. If you write down -5, you either have to write down -5 on both sides, or on one side -5 and +5 as well. Right? It always needs to be a balanced balance sheet. There are two sources of income. Equity, we haven't talked much about. Oh, should I say that one? Yes, why not? So we've got contractual payments, so the interest or dividends. Dividends we talk more in the future when we talk about shares. So what we had here, interest payments, where we have the contract via our coupons. So for me it was an expense, for you was an income. Then there's another source of income for you if you sell something more expensive than you bought it. So if you made a profit, that's an income. And yeah, that's actually the two major ones. What else do we have? Two different ways of getting funds, or three we have here. So first one is if we create a new security and we go to the primary market, we issue financial instruments and we receive cash. So that's one way to get cash. The next way to get cash is if you have an existing financial instrument or an asset and you simply sell it. So if you sell your car, you get cash. There would be another way of getting cash in for you, selling a financial instrument. And the third way of getting cash in is simply making profits. So you receive interest or get dividends, or you go to work. That would be the most obvious one for most of us here. We go to work and therefore we get income in return. Good. And amortization was simply the spread of any kind of losses or gains across the whole lifetime of that security. Good. So thank you very much for your attention. Thank you very much for participating. I hope I see you and being active in class in the future too. Don't forget to go to the tutorials. As I said, tutorials are very, very important. And reading the textbook chapter is going to help you as well. Right? Try to stay on the ball. The first few weeks are the most important in the sense that it's really the basis for everything else. Thank you very much. Sure. Let me just see if the microphones are off, because otherwise everything is recorded.